Hi, I'm Beverly Andre.
And I'm Dr. Joy Harden Bradford.
In our practices and in our communities, we hear a lot of myths and stereotypes about therapy.
Don't I know it?
Yes, especially when it comes to Black and Brown communities, we've heard a lot.
In support of V.B. Moore Campbell National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to take some time to unpack those myths together today.
Let's hear our first myth.
Therapy is only for people in crisis.
Yeah, that's definitely a myth. You do not need to have a huge event in your life to prompt you to come to therapy, because there's a lot that's happening in the world on a day-to-day basis, and how you respond to it, you may not even be aware.
I also think that I thought you did only go to therapy in crisis, right? I think, my ideas about what a therapist was were largely informed by media. Like I had not seen a therapist besides like a school counselor before like I went to college. And so I really did think like you go when you're in trouble, right? Like when you're in crisis. And only after, education and training did I recognize like there's this whole world of other things that you can work with a therapist on. And certainly you can go to therapy in a crisis, right? Like that is when a lot of people do go. But I think the part that is often missed is that if you go to therapy before a crisis happens, you might actually be able to prevent the crisis from happening.
Manage it better.
Yes. And so when you are in therapy for a crisis, we are always just kind of putting out the fires. We don't often get to that insight-oriented work, that pattern recognition that you really can see with some longer-term work. So I think it's really important for people to know you don't have to just go in a crisis.
Right.
Going to therapy is a betrayal to your family and you have no loyalty.
But I know culturally speaking, because I am Haitian, that in the islands, you don't talk about your family at all to anybody. So that was something that informed my hesitation at first when it came to becoming a therapist as well as becoming a client. But it's a therapist, and there's laws in place to maintain confidentiality.
Right.
So if you're going to talk about your family, talk about it with a therapist.
So I think this comes up a lot with like mothers and daughters. So this idea that you go to therapy and the therapist blames everything that's wrong with you on your mom. Right? And so a lot of people get really defensive because they feel like, oh, this person knows all this stuff about me. When, like you mentioned, it really is just an opportunity for you to talk about all the different things that are happening with you.
Right. Therapy is no different than talking to a friend. Child.
So I think we kind of talked about this a little earlier, that sometimes it can feel friendly, right? Like it can feel like a good kiki session with your girl when you have a great relationship with your therapist. But your friend, even if they are a therapist, is not trained to kind of just focus centrally on you.
They have their own things that they're going through, and they may not even have the emotional capacity to be able to receive what you have to say.
Therapists or therapy is stuffy, and it doesn't work.
Therapy, for some people, if they are invested, it does work. But what that looks like from person to person is different.
And I think this is a psychoeducation piece, right? Because just the idea of you being able to kind of see therapists out in your everyday life, or therapists on Instagram or in other places in social media, it really helps to humanize us. And so when people can see more of our personalities and that we like the same things, we laugh at the same kinds of jokes, I think it really kind of takes away this idea that we're stuffy.
There's never an end to therapy.
For a lot of people, therapy is very solution-focused. You go in for a particular concern and then the therapist helps you to figure out whatever's going on there and gives you some strategies, and maybe you're done in like 6 to 8 sessions.
We want you to be able to go out in life and flourish and exercise those skills that you've learned.
Yeah, and what I find, Beverly, is that a lot of people come in with like a particular concern and we work on that, and then they find that they just really enjoy that time, right? I think when you look at, how busy a lot of us are, we often don't have like just 45 to 50 minutes to just focus on ourselves.
I think we can dispel myths about therapy in the BIPOC community by engaging in conversation.
I also think that a large part of, kind of decreasing these myths is us continuing to share our stories, right? So the more and more it seems like everybody has a therapist, the more it seems like, oh, okay, well, this might be something I want to explore as well.
Right.